Welcome to Dave TV for the 27th of July, 2013. Take two! So how you doing, everybody? It's Saturday here in the Washington area, and I presume where you are too, unless you're watching this on another day, and then it's another time. But anyhow, interesting. I was, checking around to see what the hell's up with WNEW. You know, WNEW is that new CBS, well, new. It's a year and a half old CBS All Newser that was started back in January of 2012. So it's about a year and a half old. And we're wondering what the hell's going on with the station. You know, the ratings fluctuated between, say, 22nd, 23rd, all the way down to 27th place. And in fact, at the moment, when you look at the beauty contest numbers for the overall demos, the numbers are still pretty low. They're down like 26th, 27th place. It's just not getting any real traction. And yet you look at some of these other stations, particularly in the Baltimore market. You know, now WNEW signal is in Crofton, Maryland, which is in Anne Arundel County, which is technically in the Baltimore market, just across the Patuxent River from Prince George's County, which is the DC market. So technically, it's a Baltimore market station. So, and it does have a good signal into Baltimore, but yet its ratings in Baltimore are even lower. Yet, when you look at the Baltimore radio ratings, you notice a weakness in WBAL, which is the main news talker in Baltimore. You know, their ratings are slumping a bit in the overall numbers. And you look and you see a weakness in WYPR. You know, their ratings aren't that good either, the main public radio news talker. And you look at CBM, the ratings aren't so hot. You know, the three major talk stations in Baltimore are not, they're kind of at their low point lately in terms of their ratings. And you got to say to yourself, you know, WNEW has to be somehow responsible for that, even though WNEW's ratings don't show up well in Baltimore. In fact, they show up lower in Baltimore than Washington, and yet these three news talk stations are down. You got to say, somehow NEW's got to be playing into that. I don't know. But when you look in the Washington market, and TOP and AMU are still up the top of the heap, you know, the commercial all newser and the non-commercial news talker. And it just doesn't seem like WNEW is doing much in this market. So I checked with some of my sources over there. It's at Parliament Place in Lanham. And here's what I get. Making quote marks with my fingers. Where to hear that? Despite what you read on DCR TV, Midday gets strong ratings with women 25-54 and 35 plus. So we definitely needed anchor continuity there. So they moved Cheryl Simone from nights to middays and are now advertising for a full-time nighttime anchor. So Jenny Glick is now the kids and education reporter, and apparently she's doing something called Mean Kids that explores bullying. So what I'm hearing is WNEW says it's doing really well with women, middle-aged and older women. And then, you know, so they're claiming that the ratings that I get here at DCR TV are being spun to present the worst case scenario for WNEW. You know, of course, they mean that, you know, someone over at WTOP or something like that. You know, now I do get spun by everybody, I must admit. But when I get the ratings, they're just the ratings. You know, they just come out as the ratings. You know, and I look at the 25-54s and the 12 pluses and the 6 pluses, and you got to look down there and see WNEW isn't doing so hot. However, my WNEW source tells me that the station was ranked top 3 in middays among all stations among women 35 plus in the 5 Maryland counties of the Washington, D.C. metro. Okay, so let's repeat that. WNEW was ranked top 3 middays among all stations among women 35 plus in the 5 Maryland counties of the Washington, D.C. metro. So I guess that's Montgomery, Prince George's, Charles, Calvert, Prince Frederick. I don't know, what's that? 5 counties in the Washington, D.C. metro. I don't know. WNEW, I'm also told, was ranked higher than WTOP in middays among all stations among women 35 plus in those 5 counties, Maryland counties of the DC metro, in almost every ratings book this year. WNEW is consistently ranked top 10 Monday through Sunday, 6 a.m. to midnight, among all stations with women 35 plus in those 5 Maryland counties. So if you're looking, I think, at least what they're doing at CBS there is they're saying, hey, this demographic, we're going after the specific demographic of women, middle-aged, older women in the Maryland suburbs. And in that particular demographic, they do pretty well. I don't know, now, is that a demographic that advertisers want? I don't know. Maybe there's some advertisers that want, we would like middle-aged, older women in the 5 Maryland counties of the DC metro. Well, if that's the case, then WNEW is your station. My source tells me that the 6 plus and the 12 plus rankings, which we get here, are meaningless, meaning we're lumping in every store in the mall and saying the new boutique that opened next to Macy's is failing because it ranks 27th of all stores in the mall. You can't say, oh, look, what a piece of shit that new place is compared to the giant behemoth next door. No one has any idea what the profit margins are. The mega store might make $60 million a year, but with a 15% profit margin, while the new guy builds a tiny fraction of what the giant does, but with a 30% profit margin. It's really apples and oranges. Yeah, and that's true. And that's one of the reasons why Salem owns Religious Salem, Christian Talk, or WAVA 105.1 here in the Washington area. Great signal, terrible ratings. I mean, they're even lower than WNEW. They're at 35th place, but they have no overhead. They have no staff. They just pretty much run, paid for programming. They don't bill as much, but yet again, their margins are low. So, whatever their profit margin is high because they're not spending any money or whatever. So, I would see that in that case. But WNEW, it's a station with a lot of staff. We're not talking about an easy listening station where it's all automated or something like that. They have a substantial staff. And if you're going after a demographic like middle to older women in 5 Maryland counties as your target demographic, and you have a huge staff, you probably could get that demographic. You probably could get that demographic by playing, some form of adult contemporary. Female skewing love songs, adult contemporary with a couple of DJs, and a lot less overhead in terms of the personnel department, and lock in that demographic. I don't know. I appreciate what I'm hearing about WNEW. But I still have to say, I still think the whole thing is that that CBS wants to buy WTOP, and that WNEW is the drip machine. It's just they're in it just to siphon away as much as of WTOP's ratings and revenue as they can, and so far not too much of it, but the potential is there. And I think they're waiting for Jim Farley to leave. He's retiring at the end of the year, so he says. And once he's gone, I think they figure it's going to be a new game over there. And they're, I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I've made a number of recommendations to WNEW, and they haven't taken any of them. Better signal. They need to get into Virginia better, obviously. I think maybe some sort of a hybrid news talk / talk mix at the station, maybe putting talk in middays with a local feel on it. Maybe having some kind of overseer hosts like somebody like a Chris Core, who would work with the anchors in the morning so that you could have a more personality identified morning show. You could say something like, it wouldn't be Chris Core, obviously, because he works for WTOP, but you'd have some person, Chaz Henry. You could have Chaz Henry being the morning host, who would interface then with the anchors. So you'd have different anchors on in the mornings, and Chaz would come in and out of the programming and chat with them and maybe do some extended talk segments and do something different than what TOP is doing. You differentiate yourself. Make it a little more personality. Hey, I want to tune in WNEW because I like Chaz and he's on all morning. But it's more, he's kind of like tying it together kind of thing, a personality thing. Bring a kind of a mix like that in. And I've also said better website, much better website. The website there says that CBS template and it looks awful. That's what I've recommended. But, I would say, if I was doing NEW, okay, keep it running this year the way it is, and then starting in 2014, revamp it. I don't know. But obviously it ain't going anywhere, at least from what we hear. And they seem to be CBS suits seem to be very happy with what's going on. We don't know how much money it's making. I can't imagine it's making all that much. And for having a good signal into Baltimore, it's not showing up in the Baltimore ratings, although I do think it's having an effect on the Baltimore talk radio market. And that's kind of a mystery to me, but I do think it is. What's interesting, though, about Baltimore, and I didn't mention this earlier, is TOP. WTOP's ratings in Baltimore are up there in the top 20 consistently now. So maybe if who's bringing down WBAL and CBM and YPR, it's TOP, not NEW. And NEW has the better signal in Baltimore. Go figure. All right, folks. We're still waiting on the sale of WJLA. My sources tell me that Hearst folks have been seen mulling around the station, but we're also hearing a lot of rumblings that Sinclair, which is Baltimore-based, they own Channel 45 in Baltimore and they operate Channel 54, is also one of the top contenders for Allbritton stations. Now, they own 7 other stations besides WJLA in places like Charleston, South Carolina, Little Rock, Arkansas, and Harrisburg, and Roanoke, and stuff like that. So, could it all the stations go to one owner? I don't know. We're hearing that rumbling, but I really, 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 in my heart of hearts, think that JLA will go to somebody like Hearst or maybe ABC or somebody like that, whereas the other stations will then go to some other company that deals more in mid to small market stations like Sinclair or Nexstar or somebody like that. So it'll be interesting to see. Tribune's also been mentioned as a possibility there too. Tribune, they own WDCW Channel 50 here in Washington, so they could have a duopoly. And it would make sense for them to buy Channel 7. You can move the stations into a single studio there, and that's usually the way to go these days. So we'll see. But still, no word. Will we hear next week? Maybe. Another lame week at FishbowlDC. Man, what are they up to? I'm just, damn. I'm not going to mention that. I don't know. They do this big senior superlatives thing, and then it just kind of wilts. Like nobody's responding. None of their stuff gets any. It's like you look at all their stuff, and there's no retweets, there's no comments on anything. They got these, staff of 3 or 4 people, and they're just trying to write this funny stuff, and just falling flat. All this, the sex names, sex nicknames for the entire FishbowlDC staff, and then all the top, they just take the same top 20 or 30 star Capitol Hill journos over and over again, and just run stuff about them and them, and it's just about them and them and them and them, and it's sad. They really, the improv ought to have bad comic night, terrible, horrible comedians in the Washington area, and they could have Betsy Rothstein and some of those other folks from FishbowlDC, and they could have Chris Plant. You listen to Chris Plant on WMAL, and it sounds like he's preaching. He sounds like he's a bad comic doing a routine to a largely empty audience. Maybe 1 or 2 drunk guys sitting in the back. He'll tell a joke, and then he has to explain it. He'll say something, and then he'll say, he obviously realizes nobody got it, so then he has to explain the joke, which the mark of a really bad comic. All right, folks. And more fun on the WMAL morning show. Man, it just sounds so serious and dour, and sounds like 2 grumps. 2 grumps in the morning. Man. All right, folks. Thanks for watching Dave TV for the 27th of July. Book 'em, Dano.